Well, hi everyone. This is Paul Feuerstein, the editor-in-chief of Dentistry Today, and I have a lot of fun here. I meet people all the time, and a couple of years ago, I met Matt Burton. Matt, how are you?
Good, Paul. How are you?
And I met him at a dental show, and he was at one of these. He had a booth about this big, and he says, "I got this new cool thing to show you." And I go, "Another one?" And I stared at it for a while and went, "Whoa, you got something pretty cool here." So, what we're going to be talking about is pretty much posterior and anterior restorative restorations, and all the troubles and problems we've had with everything from Tafelmeyer bands to matrix, all sorts of matrix bands and contacts and contours of our composites. And Matt is a GP. You're a GP in just south of Chicago, right?
Yep, Frankfort, Illinois.
Oh, Frankfort, Illinois. So over time, both of us have had similar issues. You know, we just trying to get the right contour, and you put a wedge in, and the band pops off, and all sorts of things happen. So, I guess Matt, why don't you tell us a little story about what you saw and what you thought about and what you did?
Yeah, so I just got tossed into a practice that was pretty busy, and I had to catch up with the composite world pretty quickly, and it was changing dynamically. We had materials changing, we had rings changing, we had sectionals, and all this stuff was happening. And when when the dust settled about 6 years ago, I was noticing that that procedure was just never consistent for me. I would some days it would be fine, some days it wouldn't, and I was getting frustrated mostly with like the cleanup, and I was using different types of rings, Garrisons, Triodents, you name it. And I was just spending a god awful time setting up, being frustrated in setup, and then spending a ton of time trying to clean up the mess I've made in that time period. And so what I ended up realizing, in a nutshell, was that the wedge was a big driving factor in what we do. And I think that a lot of times everyone was focused on the ring and these other gadgets and widgets that go with it, and the wedge was kind of forgotten. And what I realized was that if we made a small change to this device, that it would enhance what the rings were doing, what the sectionals were doing, and overall just result in better results and more efficient, and just superior to what I was doing and achieving on a daily basis. And that's how I invented the Versa Wedge.
Yeah, what we've all seen, as you practice, is you're doing a composite, and you have the ring on, and you have everything in, and then you jam a wedge in, and then when you look at your composite, it goes like this at the bottom of the box.
It was happening a lot, and you would have to like technique your way through it, right? So there was, I was on all these blogs, like reading, it was like a couple of different doctors, even some guys throughout the world, and they had like these Teflon tape ideas, and I'm looking, and I'm like, that's fabulous, but it's going to take forever.
Yeah, we want to be quick and simple.
Yeah. And so I was, I could see that I wasn't the only one having this problem, right? It was everywhere. It wasn't something that I was doing wrong, or it was the technology that was at hand. And so, that's when I kind of realized, like, all right, I got to figure something out. And honestly, I was just doing it to make my practice move smoother. And never really imagined on the day that I did this, that it would evolve into an interview with you today, for example. So it's been a wild ride.
So yeah, so I'm just going to jump the gun for a second. So if you don't know what we're talking about, Matt has developed a whole system, and it's on a website simply named burtonbands.com. And we can't really put a lot of video up here or show a lot of pictures, but if you go to this, I have to tell you, Matt, you did a phenomenal job on this website. I'm so impressed, because when you told me about your product, I said, "Well, how's it work?" He said, "Just look at my website." And my God, there's animations, there's step by step. It shows how the wedges work, how your little bands work. So immediately before, if you decide to tune out right now, just go to burtonbands.com. You'll know everything you have to know. But so explain a little bit about the concept of the wedge, and also your little system with the wedge and the actual matrix band connected to it, and it's just remarkable.
Sure. No, thank you for all the compliments. I appreciate it.
Well, it's true. It's true.
The main device that is very compatible and super easy to use is the Versa Wedge. And what it is it's a plastic polypropylene wedge with one key design difference, and that it's, instead of coming to a point at the end, the end of it splits open. So when you press it through the teeth, it can squeeze shut, and then you push it through, and it spreads out. So it'll follow the contour of the tooth as it emerges through the embrasure, and that allows a lot of things to happen, even in just, you know, traditional quick cases where, you know, you just got an ideal situation. It seals the gingival margin all the way through, eliminates flash, and that, you know, when we're trying to like pick up that lingual or buccal wall and trying to scratch all that squared flash off, it gets rid of that.
That's exactly
And
it.
especially in like quadrant dentistry, you know, that's where it's really, really effective when you've got the adjacents and you need a wedge to seal two teeth at the same time. And that's where it really holds strong. But I made it to be compatible with what we had. And that was one of my frustrations as a practitioner early on was, you know, you had to like dive in with different systems, you know, and so I've got like 5 different systems in my office, right? And nothing's getting the job done. And so this is compatible with, you know, with all rings, any sectionals, Toffelmeyers, you know, if you don't use a ring, that's fine too. It still works. It's basically a wedge replacement that just really changes how things turn out and how quickly you can do them.
But you also have a little connected piece too.
I do. So I've got some like niche products, I guess, like spin-offs of the Versa Wedge. And so I attached a pre-contoured sectional matrix, if you will, to the Versa Wedge that split. So in, you know, in like single MO or DO cases, not for quadrants or adjacents, you know, that's, you don't want to do it for those. But if you got like a quick one, like when I'm doing a crown delivery, a lot of times I'll restore on the delivery. So I'll glue the crown in on 19 and say 20 had a DO. Then I'll glue the crown in and after I prep out 20, and then I'll just pop this, you know, little matrix system in there and then just get a perfect result without having to do much of anything. And so it's times like those.
So if again, we don't have the, well, we're going to show you a couple of pictures, but with this particular thing, if you can visualize your wedge and a little sectional matrix attached to the wedge, so you can actually slip the whole thing right through. You probably don't even need a ring half the time if you're doing those things.
No, a lot of times I don't. But again, that's, you know, I wouldn't say it's completely ringless.
Yeah.
But just for the right case, yeah, it's awesome. But
how many times have I been futzing around and trying to get it? I'm holding the ring with the band with my finger and going like this, and so, geez, I wish it was one piece. I could just stick it right through the contact, and so it does serve that purpose. But the key is that this wedge with this little split. And again, we're going to show you a picture in a couple of seconds. But one of the things about this little split is if I'm pushing this wedge through from the buccal, it opens up and the lingual wraps around. But if you feel like you don't have enough, if you want to get a tighter contact, you can actually take a secondary wedge and kind of jam it in between the two tines and really get a nice, perfect seal at the corners of those boxes.
Yep. And so it comes with the second optional wedge that can slide in between the splits of the first, like you just mentioned. And I've also developed 3 other sizes that'll be coming out in September. So we're finishing those now and excited for that to, you know, just kind of adapt and be able to be used in different size of embrasures and also as well as furcation cases. And
let's do an experiment here. I'm going to we're working with Zoom, and let's see if this works. I'm going to see if I can get you to put a little picture up on the screen for us. So hang on a second. Let's do this, and let's see if we can do that.
And we're going to get it done.
Yeah, looks good.
So these are the 3 additional sizes here on the left. And so the orange size that's available now, we're calling that the small, and the green is medium, yellow large, and then there's a third called an anatomical. And so where these wedges get a little bit bigger is obviously in their width, a little bit in the height, but I found that a lot of our wedges in the past got wider and taller, and that causes problems. And so I kept the profile low on these wedges, despite being wider, made these wings a little thicker so they can, you know, they can be used in bigger cases such as this. You know, this is a very big embrasure space, and it works, you know, it works beautifully. But then you have this little guy for furcation cases, and this is a view from the underside. And these little little humps here, obviously if a dentist is watching this, they know it goes in the furcation, and they've got like a little hollow pocket in here covered by plastic. So that piece, that hump can be flexible, so it can adapt to how far it needs to go into the furcation without, smashing itself in there, and keeping those really tough cases on, especially in the mesial first bicuspids, keeping them things.
So while we have this picture up, these are the new size. The standard one looks like the green one or the yellow one pretty much. One of the things that you told me was that sometimes you have two teeth that are so tight together, you can't get the wedge in there. I'm looking at this thing. So how do you do that? And Matt gave me the simplest answer. He says, cut one of the tips off and it'll slip right through. I mean,
you can make the world's skinniest wedge in less than 2 seconds.
So that's a great thing. Let's see if we can untangle this. Put me back where I'm supposed to be here. So let's do a little bit of magic here for a second. And so with the systems that we're looking at this, so how is this going to work? Say if I want to do back-to-back MODO type of thing with the wedges, with just your sectional or with the standard sectional. I mean, what's the advantage here?
The biggest advantage is just being able to seal two teeth at the same time. So that's the biggest challenge, is being able to do the same thing on two teeth going in two separate directions. So when we look down at our preps, like the teeth are opening, they're going in opposite ways. But there's so much that goes into the success of an adjacent class 2 that I noticed that the wedges were failing to give me everything. They would give me one, like for example, I could get a seal, but then I would look down at my matrix bands and they would be split apart because the wedge was up too high.
Right.
Or I would have my matrix
Yeah.
bands touching each other and I wouldn't have a gingival seal. And so sometimes I was chose to just like pick the lesser of the two, like whatever I can handle easiest, I'll deal with. But this wedge, the fact that it splits and it stays low, it allows your matrix bands to maintain their shape. And instead of getting these like point contacts at the occlusal surface, which we've all polished away, and then you end up open, you end up getting, properly formed matrix bands and a gingival seal, and using the ring right on top. The ring compatibility is the cool thing, so when you pop it in there, and you've got your two matrix bands, what I use is the Triodent ring or the Garrison Nitin, and it's even compatible with the 3D Fusion. But essentially, you saw how the wedge split. So the ring pad goes in between those splits. It drives them apart and open. So it'll pull each.
So it really presses it up against the gingival box.
Yep, it presses it shut. And it keeps the ring off the matrix bands. So that was another thing, that when you pinch those matrix bands together, if you didn't have it just right, or the matrix bands couldn't glide a little,
Get a little
squaring off, you would square that off and you'd sit there and try to trim, you would have a square contact, and trying to trim that off it's not fun. We've all been there, but just allowing the
little point, you have your little pointed burrs and going upside down and around. And the ginger's bleeding all over the place. It's like
it's so much fun. But if you want to throw me the screen share really quick, I have a quick case right here. I'll just show you a picture of the two next.
Let's do it. Let's push our luck here. So let's do this here. Let me push some buttons here, and we'll do that. We'll do this, and let's try it.
Awesome. So we're gonna do that, and let me go through here. So this is kind of an example of how it works. So you've got your adjacents, sectional matrix bands, Vursawedge goes in, and you can see how the wings split, and it's already following both contours. So then this is the Triodent ring. It can fit right over the handle on this side. And then the other ring pad goes right in between those split wings of that wedge. So it's allowing these matrix bands, you can see how they're perfectly curved with the tooth and sealing these gingival margins on both teeth. And it's just lickety split, and it keeps one thing I noticed with patients too was that if you would put this on the palate, you would pinch that palatal tissue. And this keeps the pressure on the wing of the wedge, and it's off the palatal tissue. So you don't have to worry about the ring slipping off and smashing your matrix bands, or inadvertently pinching the patient's palatal tissue. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, because sometimes you'll end up with you'll compress the band, you get a little divot in there.
Like a square edge right here. You
Yeah.
get like a flat square.
Yeah.
And it's a nightmare.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come back and do a whole presentation at some point on this, Matt. So really, this is kind of to whet your appetite and try to explain what's going on. And like I said, the best thing we can do here is just direct you right to www.burtonbands.com, BURTON bands.com. And there's a lot to see there, a lot to learn. There's ordering information. Matt will be at a couple of dental shows. He'll be doing some magic tricks and things and cards, whatever it takes to get you in the booth. It's so hard. The hardest thing that I see with new products like this is someone has to come by and ask you, what is that? And you go, oh, it's a wedge. They go, oh, I'm going to keep going. Don't keep going.
Thanks. You want a flyer? No, I'm good. I'm good.
and that's the truth. And that's been the frustration a lot of times. And that's the fun I have of going to the dental meetings, which have now resurfaced, we hope. And, and get a chance to see and meet people like Matt and some other people that we've met and give them a chance. So when you go to the big shows, when they start going to the big shows, it's nice to go to the giant booths, but look for the little ones too. Now, luckily for Matt, he's going to be in he may be in a combination coming through. Some cool things are happening for Matt. He's doing really well, and I have to congratulate you on some things that have been going on with your product. And let's just say it's been noticed. How about that?
It has been noticed. I appreciate it.
So I'm going to sign off. If you gave me back my control here.
I think I gave it to you.
Let's see. Yeah, I got it. So this has been really good. It's good catching up with you, Matt. I haven't seen you in well over a year. I haven't seen anybody in over a year, actually. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in person pretty soon. Probably see you at one of the meetings coming up. I think we talked about that. And everybody, please, if any dentist who's doing into composites of any sort into proximal, you got to go to burtonbands.com and you learn a heck of a lot. So thanks, Matt. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
You too.